Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Gift of Need podcast. I'm Jude Trang. This podcast explores the overlooked power of human need and how it shapes behavior, relationships, and society. And it's born from my belief that our needs are not burdens, but gifts. My special guest today is Chuck Tampio. I met Chuck years ago when I was involved with a landscape design organization with his beautiful wife, Phyllis. John and I became fast friends with Chuck and Phyllis as we learned how much we had in common. Our love of travel, our love of good food, and, most importantly, all things Italian. Chuck, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Okay, Jude, first of all, it's great to be with you and your impressive resume. But, I guess I'll just talk about the fact that what got me to Tucson. I worked for 25 years in the nonprofit field in Washington, D.C. I loved Washington. I loved when I was offered a job there. And I also loved when I left. Washington became a very different place. But I wanted to experience out in the West. I think life is too short to live in one dimension. So we moved out here about 20 years ago, bought a little ranch on the east side, and boarded horses a bit, and then volunteered for the Tucson Museum of Art, where I continue to give art talks throughout the city of Tucson and sometimes elsewhere.
Yes, and we have had great fun at Chuck's Art Talks. As a matter of fact, we did one at our house with about 50 people, and it was, what was it, Chuck?
The unknown women artists of the Renaissance.
Yeah, boy, was that fascinating and fun. So I've invited Chuck here today, though, not to talk about art, but about poverty and how to care for the poor, specifically his experience in the Peace Corps. Chuck, why don't you start at the very beginning? How did you become interested in the Peace Corps?
Well, first, you know how sometimes one single moment can change your whole life. And for me, it was when I was taking my junior year abroad when we went to Italy by boat, and one of the stops of the ship was in Palermo. And when we got to Palermo, we were just there for one day, and I went to the church, the Cathedral of Monreale, just south of Palermo. And in this beautiful golden gilded church, there were children playing in the dirt out in front of the cathedral, and they were naked, little boys and girls. They, 4 years old, 5 years old. They had no shoes, they had no clothing, and when I looked at them, I thought they look like me. Because, I was not long before that a little Italian-American street kid. And they had last names that were, the names of my friends. And so I thought, there but the grace of God go I, Mm-hmm. And so there was this crushing poverty in Sicily at the time. And so I was just so moved by this experience. I sort of pledged to myself that, at least at some point in my life, I'm going to do something about poverty. And so when I graduated, I came back to the United States after that Italian experience. I heard President Kennedy say, "Ask not what you can do for your country," and I thought he was speaking to me directly. And so I answered. Basically, I answered his call, and was, fortunate enough to get assigned to a station in Malawi. It was Nyasaland when I got there, and it was a very exciting time in East Africa in the 60s because one country after another was becoming independent, and so Malawi was part of that movement.
I'm going to read a little bit of Kennedy's inaugural address in 1961, where he said, "To those people in the huts and villages of half the globe struggling to break the bonds of mass misery, we pledge our best efforts to help them help themselves for whatever period is required, because it is right. If a free society cannot help the many who are poor, it cannot save the few who are rich. And that last line, like many of Kennedy's very succinct but piercing words, sticks with me. And so, of course, the very famous part of that speech was, "And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." So that was your kind of the clarion call that you heard as a young man. When you graduated in the spring, I think you said, of 1963, you didn't go to graduate school then.
No, I didn't actually, because of that call from the Kennedys, whose family had a long tradition of public service, despite their great wealth. Mm-hmm. And so the first director of the Peace Corps was President Kennedy's brother-in-law, Sergeant Shriver, who had married John F. Kennedy's sister. So, yeah, it was just the exact right time for me. I wasn't ready for graduate school. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I joined the Peace Corps, and of course it changed my life forever.
And that was a 2-year commitment, right? Yeah,
it was 2 years, and I got sent to Africa and those huts that lived in those huts that Kennedy was talking about. And
your training. Tell us about your training, though. I mean, they didn't just send you over to Africa, right?
Yeah, the training, to be honest, Peace Corps had no idea what our training should be at that time. They were a brand new organization, just becoming a national organization. So what the training that would have been best was language. If we had learned to speak the local language, it's a version of Swahili, and of course there are no cognates, and so it's somewhat difficult to learn. But we did an outward bound experience in Puerto Rico for a month, and that was just a great experience. And I bonded with the other wonderful volunteers. They were all wonderful young men and women at the time who decided to do something significant with their lives rather than just go into a job and start a career.
I remember you sharing with me that they were more influenced by Bob Dylan than by Frank Sinatra. I think that's telling.
Well, there's a cultural rift right there.
That's right. It was more interested in meaningful experience.
Exactly.
And looking outward, right?
Right.
So off you go to Nyasaland.
Yes.
Is that how you pronounce it?
Nyasaland.
Nyasaland, present-day Malawi, a British colony. What did you do there?
Well, all of us had assignments, of course, and almost all of the volunteers were placed in groups, 1, 2, 3, or 4. 2, 3, 4, or 5. I was the only one, for some reason, that was stationed alone, and which was, worked out to be a really good movement for me, because I was forced to socialize with Africans. I didn't have my other Peace Corps buddies to be with socially. So being stationed alone actually turned out to be a gift in disguise, and I wondered why that happened to just me. But my assignment was to teach in a agricultural junior college, and so I was teaching actually English, but I also taught algebra and math, and anytime they needed a teacher, I would teach whatever subject. And it was important that the Peace Corps was there at the time, because a lot of British educators and British people in Nyasaland at that time left, because as the country lost its relationship with Britain, it no longer became a member of the Commonwealth, then a lot of English people left, and we Americans actually had to take their place.
Filled the gap, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so in training those young men, what was the training? Where would that have led them?
Well, I've never had students like this before since then, because any student who graduated immediately got a job, and as a junior college graduate, and the jobs that we were training people for, these were men, not women, and we were teaching them to be agricultural agents. So they would go into small farms. Malawi was peppered with small family farms, but the techniques that they used to grow their vegetables and feed their animals were based on rumors and myths and outdated notions. And so our young graduates would go and consult with them on how to improve their crops, how to save their seeds, and basically how to get a greater yield, because there was, and actually still is, a great deal of hunger there.
You also self-initiated something else for women. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, again, since I was stationed alone, I became part of the African village. So I became part of village life, which was a real gift to me just by accident. And what I observed was that the families stopped supporting their daughters by 8th grade, where the boys would go on to high school and secondary school. And the reason was that they had to pay tuition. Even the public schools had tuition, which was $6 a year. And so they stopped basically supporting the girls with tuition. So I started a night secondary school, which I was going to organize for free for young women to come and get their GEDs. And that turned out to be a really unique and wonderful experience.
What about the children, the younger than the 8th grade, and what was there for them in the village? Or did the Peace Corps, did you guys do anything, or you do anything for them?
Well, actually, my house, we trained in jungle training in Puerto Rico, only to move into a 3-bedroom ranch house in Malawi. It was a former British family that moved on because of independence, and so I welcomed young children into my yard. I had a nice big yard, and they came and they helped me plant flowers, and they helped me with the little gardening tasks, for which I paid them. And then when the national schools were on break, I invited a number of other Peace Corps volunteers to give up their vacation and to come with me and build a playground. And so we all built a playground together, and with little children running around while we were building it. It was just one of those great moments.
Have you ever been back?
I have not been back, and I'm very sorry. I would have definitely liked to have taken my wife back to show her, where I spent 2 years of my life. But volunteers have had different experiences. Some that went to the Dominican Republic, for example, could from the East Coast could take a little plane and get there back to join their families and their schools. Going to Malawi is a very different story.
Yes.
Even the guest infrastructure, hotels and such, is very, very primitive there.
Yeah.
And so going back became a real arduous experience, and arduous and expensive.
Yeah.
So.
Do you ever have contact with the other guys in your cohort?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I after 25 years, I sponsored a reunion in Washington, D.C., And so about 3/4 of our group got together in Washington, and we told, old stories and relived old lies. And then subsequent to that, then I sponsored a reunion every year for about a dozen volunteers that would get together either at a friend's house in Cape Cod or my house here in Tucson.
How fun is that? When you think about those guys and what you know of them, have any of the rest of them gone into other nonprofits or service? I mean, the Peace Corps affect them in kind of a similar way to you?
I think that all of them, now that I'm thinking it through, but I think all of them that I know got involved in education. So most of them became teachers. We did get certificates in teacher training while we were in training.
Oh, interesting.
So I would say 90% went into education of some sort.
And let's talk about how that fulfillment and sense of purpose from your time serving the people in Malawi influenced the course of your life. What did you do when you got out and came home?
Well, when I got out, I went straight to graduate school and worked on a doctorate degree, building the school turned out to be the most significant part of my service, and that I had to raise money, hire teachers, and become the headmaster of a school for women. And everything I learned about management, I learned through that experience. And that was better than a graduate degree in business. And so I started out as an educator, but very quickly got into management and spent the rest of my career in management for a variety of nonprofit organizations.
Tell us about Close-Up Foundation and what you did there.
Yes, I was working for the Department of Education in Rhode Island when I met a man who had started this organization, and he asked me if I could help him in Washington, D.C., to bring young people to Washington to learn about democracy, to learn about the federal process, to learn about government. And what started as kind of a tour experience, I helped to transform it into an educational experience. So we actually developed a curriculum in Washington with significant goals, and we brought groups of young children and their teachers, high school students and their teachers, and I did that for 25 years and brought 250,000 students and teachers. So yeah, it was a big organization. We had about 1,000 guests a week, and we brought them to DC, and actually about 20 of them are now members of Congress.
Oh, really? How wonderful. So you see the fruit of that investment that you made. There's a lot of things we do in life that we don't get to see.
Right.
The long-term impact of. And that's very cool that you get to see that. Did you, after Close-Up, you began an association with something brand new. I think it was 1979, that has changed the course of how news is broadcast in the country. Am I remembering this correctly?
Let me there's one chapter missing, Jude, and that is that after I left Close-Up, I became president of an organization called Earth Force, which was a combination of civic and environmental education. So we were teaching teachers how to add environmental learning into their curriculum and any and all subjects. So I did that for 3 years, and I did in '79 work to help start C-SPAN, and became the first anchor. So for about 10 years, actually, while I was vice president of Close-Up, I interviewed a lot of people on C-SPAN as it was just getting started.
Yeah, when it got started, wasn't it related to sessions of Congress or something? I wasn't coherent at that time about what was happening. But.
What was happening was Tip O'Neill was the Speaker of the House at that time, and he wanted to record this house with these new VHS tapes that just came out. And so he installed a camera and a VHS recorder to record the sessions of Congress and start an archive. Then Brian Lamb, a visionary journalist, went to Tip O'Neill and said, can I broadcast the sessions that you're taping? And he said, sure. And so C-SPAN actually became a switch. And all it was that it would switch the cameras in Congress to on and off, and then he would broadcast them. And then when they were not in session, he turned it off. So it was the network was coming on and off only when Congress is in session. And we at Close Up went to Brian and we worked with him to say, when you're having this dead time, basically, instead of turning the network off, we have content in terms of meetings between students, the students and teachers we were bringing to DC with members of Congress. So those became broadcast on C-SPAN. They were the first broadcasts outside of members of the House of Representatives. But, that quickly expanded from the House of Representatives to committee meetings, then to the Senate. We had to go through a whole nother process to get approval to the Senate. And we tried to get to the Supreme Court, but that still hasn't worked yet.
Behind closed doors.
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. So that was, wow. And then C-SPAN evolved. Were you part of the evolution if I'm remembering correctly, it kind of changed from just being things related to government, or am I missing that?
No, it's all pretty much related to government. What Brian Lamb, what his revolutionary thought was that, those of us who lived in Washington have access to committee meetings. We can go to them. We can go to rallies and see what's going on. And Brian said, let's let the rest of the country have access to these same things as if they lived in D.C. And so the interviews, for example, became long-form interviews, which means that we seldom, as those of us who started as anchors, seldom interrupted a guest when they were speaking. We let them speak their whole mind, for better, for worse. we let them, go on. So this was sort of long form journalism, and so it was unique and a really different approach. And so we got members of Congress, members of the cabinet, to reveal a lot about themselves and their deeper thoughts by not interrupting them every 10 seconds and layering question on question.
Right.
So it was a wonderful experience. I got to interview a lot of people in the Reagan cabinet and the Clinton and Bush years.
Well, in the context of the gift of need, am I correct in seeing that the needs of the people of Africa became an actual gift to you, as it offered you the opportunity to use your talents and abilities to serve them, and then you received joy, right, and personal fulfillment and satisfaction by doing that?
Well, I also learned a lot. It was really an educational experience for me to learn about people who lived on the edge of such severe poverty. And so, part of the gift I think that they gave to me is this educational experience to know about their lives and their dreams and their aspirations. And so, I was set as a result of that experience to say that I never wanted to work for a company that made a profit. much to the chagrin of my wife. But I got the service gene, I guess, and continued in that way for the rest of my career.
Did you see, even in their poverty, was there a sense of joy?
Well, the Malawi people have a wonderful sense of humor, actually, and they can laugh in the midst of, hunger, and the young people had very few clothing, very little clothing. They had to weave their way to put on a T-shirt because it had so many holes in it, and so and they loved their T-shirt, even that it was something that we brought over from Goodwill. But it was better than no T-shirt. So they were appreciative for what they've had, and it's very, very sad to say that country has slided even further backward. So the hopes that we had during those Kennedy years, actually the hopes of all of East Africa during the Kennedy years were pretty high about the fruits of independence, but it just didn't work out that way. And a lot of corruption in government.
Right.
And so the people have been oppressed in many of the East African countries, unfortunately, including Malawi. But they still were people who were sort of half full kinds of people. And that was something that was an important learning experience for me, is to see how people can take joy in a simple pleasure, just eating a fresh mango.
Isn't that something? It's just amazing.
Yeah.
Well, Chuck went to serve the needs of the people of Malawi, and it sounds like in exchange, you came back with the gift of perspective and life skills that then he, in turn, used to enhance and enrich the lives of others here at home. It's really an amazing story, Chuck. I really thank you for coming and sharing about it. I had some other friends who were in the Peace Corps in Turkey in the mid-'60s, and I haven't heard as much detail about them, their lives, but I know that their lives were also impacted by that experience and has caused them to be very service-oriented. So we could go on, but I think it's time to bring the conversation to a close. Thank you, Chuck, for making the time to be with us today and to talk about how the gifts and the needs that we have as individuals can be gifts to other individuals and communities and society as a whole.
And Jude, you're a gift to me.
Oh, thank you. I paid him to say that, folks. Well, Chuck, and I just say to everybody, if you're lucky and live in Tucson, you might be able to catch one of Chuck's art talks at the Tucson Museum of Art. Do you have any upcoming talks, Chuck?
Not scheduled so far. A lot of my talks are given in private settings, nursing homes and retirement places. But stay tuned for Tucson Museum of Art, because their Sunday art talk series is wonderful.
Yeah, we've enjoyed those. So the great music you're hearing was written and performed by Gabe Kubanda at Kubanda Music. You can find him on any streaming service. Please consider subscribing to this free podcast and my free Substack newsletter, and leave a review or a comment. I'd love to hear from you. Bye.